Good evening and a very warm welcome to all the participants who have joined for this webinar on Indian commodity derivative market, the past, present, and the future. So today we have with us Dr. Shanmugam, Assistant Professor NISM, and it's my pleasure to give you his brief introduction. Dr. V. Shanmugam has completed his PhD in Agriculture Economics from Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi in 1997. He carries with him an experience of around 22 years and was last associated with Multi Commodity Exchange of India Private Limited as head research and index administration. He had association with various financial organizations like Nomura Research Institute and FinTech India Private Limited, MSEI Private Limited, United States Department of Agriculture. Sir, a very warm welcome to you. And without any further delay, I request you to lead the way from here.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajalakshmi, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for each and every one of you having taken some time out to, understand what the Indian commodity derivative markets are. Given that it is just about 50 minutes within which I've been told that this presentation has to close, I can only deal with the peripheral aspects of what these markets are. How do they operate and everything is something that you need to learn by either doing it or by going through some webinars on how do commodity derivative markets operate and things like that. Okay, so having said that, thanks Rajalakshmi and thanks to Team Marketing and NASM for this wonderful platform to reach out to all of the participants about the commodity derivative markets, actually. So let me tell you, there was an interesting question that was put on the question and answer box by Mukku Krishna Reddy, which is with respect to the commodities, actually, and inflation. How inflation affects commodities. Rather, Mr. Krishna Reddy, you should put it the other way, actually, because inflation is increase in commodity prices. Inflation is a measure of increase in the commodity prices, actually. But your question is very interesting because many of us do not know, because there is an increase in one of the commodity prices, it leads to increase in the other commodity prices. For example, if you see an increase in the crude oil prices, actually, because crude oil is used in making up petrochemicals, which is for the plant protection chemicals, and crude oil is also used for production of petrol and diesel that transports commodities, from the producers to the markets and things like that. So the prices of crude oil, when they go up, cost of marketing, cost of production of commodities, agriculture commodities go up, and so the inflation goes up, actually. So your question is partially right, and your question is partially answered within that question in itself, actually. Okay, so having said that, so we all know that the economy has a primary sector, which is the raw materials, actually, and then you have the secondary sector, which we know, which is the manufacturing sector, and the tertiary sector, which is the services sector. And then over and above that, because now we have information and environmental technology, we have people like Ola's and Swiggy's and Zomato's have come in, which actually aggregate these, services which are produced at the tertiary end and offer it to the customers, actually. Okay. How am I affected by the commodities or the commodity prices? How do inflation impact me as a person? So think about it. You may not be there sitting in front of this PC to listen to this lecture had commodities not been digged out at some corner of the world, and that leads to production of aluminum, that leads to production of various base metals, that leads to production of coal and conversion of coal through the secondary sector, which is for the production of electricity, and that production of electricity to be distributed through the tertiary sector, which is the distribution companies, who distribute those electricity to the PC, so that your PC can run and you can listen to this lecture, actually. So without commodities, Secondary sector is nothing, tertiary sector is nothing, and so is your Ola and Uber. So if there is an increase in the commodity prices, actually, it leads to increase in wages, it leads to increase in price we pay for services, it leads to overall inflation actually. So that is the point. So this inflation is a function of volatility in the commodity prices that is coming up in the primary sector that gets passed on unless that volatility is marked out of the market. Okay, so having said that, who mops it out of the market? It is those arbitrageurs and speculators who mops it out of the market, and the hedgers leave those risks in the markets actually. So it is essential we need to have markets which can actually de-risk the primary sector so that our secondary sector, our tertiary sector, and our quaternary sector remain as much competitive as possible. So this is how the commodity and the economy are correlated with each other. So to answer Mr. Mukul Krishna Reddy's question, commodities cause inflation and inflation also cause commodity prices to go up. So those can happen both ways. Actually, that's very interesting, right? So having said that, what are commodities? How can you define commodities? So if you are talking about the table which is in front of you where you have kept your laptop or PC, actually, that is not a commodity. That is actually a craftsman product, a carpenter's product. Actually, one carpenter would have designed this table or made this table in a particular way compared with another carpenter who might have made this table in a different way. And you might prefer your own carpenter compared with the carpenter of your neighbor who would design the table in a different way, actually. So the price of the table is not a function of the ultimate material which goes into it. It is a function of the craftsman's job, actually. So that cannot be a commodity. So anything branded, anything value added beyond a point where you cannot standardize it, that cannot be a commodity. So it should be physical. You should be able to see that. You should be able to feel that, physical and tangible. And at times it can also include intangible. So what are those intangibles? I mean, in COVID, we realized that oxygen is an important commodity actually. So that is an intangible commodity. You can fill oxygen into a tank, then that becomes a commodity as such actually. If you can transfer electricity from one place to another place, which we can do now, so that becomes an intangible commodity. So that those are not which you can touch it, but of course you can feel it obviously, but that is also a commodity which has its own quantitatively measurable, which has its own qualitative, measures which can be certified and traded actually. So it should not be physical and tangible. It should also be quantitatively measurable and qualitatively assayable. And the prices, in most cases, are impacted by interest rates. And interest rates, why should they influence the market? Forces are the market prices because some of the commodities are produced during a particular season, and we store those commodities and we carry those commodities across over a period in time. When these commodities are bought and stored, the person who is buying it and storing it is actually losing the interest rate on the capital he is investing in buying that commodity and storing that commodity, and he gets that capital only back when he sells the commodity at a later point in time. So for him, interest rate matters most actually because he would like to cover in his storage activity the interest rate that he had foregone through pricing it in alignment with the interest rates in a particular economy. And if you are talking about a global commodity, the currency exchange rate also has an influence on the commodity prices, actually. So, commodities, physical, tangible, the prices should be influenced by currency and interest rates, and they should be qualitatively measurable, assayable, and quantitatively measurable. And it should be exchangeable in a marketplace, and there is a medium of exchange. And in our case, the medium of exchange is the currency, and they also exhibit a high level of inelastic demand. and they should be storable as well, actually, because unless you store a commodity, you cannot consume a commodity, because you cannot produce a commodity to consume it immediately. But we do that, especially in the case of electricity. But it again, you can store electricity. So these are key characteristics actually which define commodities from a commodity market perspective, actually. Okay, so now you understand what are commodities. Now let's get into what are the groups of commodities which are being dealt with in this particular lecture. So you have agricultural commodities, you have grains, you have cotton, you have oil seeds, and you have vegetable oils which are produced out of oil seeds, actually. You have aluminum, you have steel, you have the gold bars, actually, which is a precious metal, and you have base metal, and you have the ferrous metals, actually, and you have crude oil here, and you have coal, which is the energy sector. Crude oil again belongs to the energy sector, and the natural gas, actually. So these are typically the group of commodities. So you have a precious metal, you have a base metal, you have a ferrous metal, you have processed agriculture commodities, you have food grains, you have fiber, which is cotton, you have crude oil, you have coal. So these are commodities which are broadly traded in the commodities markets, actually. Okay, so there are metals, there are energy commodities, and there are agricultural commodities, actually. So which is the commodity which is the largest in terms of its size? The largest commodity in terms of its size is the crude oil, actually. Crude oil, and if you combine that with natural gas and coal, the energy commodities constitute the largest segment of the market. How do we arrive at that value? The total production multiplied by the average price of that particular commodity, that is actually leading to the total value of that particular commodity. So the energy commodities are the first largest commodities, and the second largest commodities is the metals and the precious metals, and the ferrous metals, actually. So you have iron ore, you have gold, you have copper, aluminum. So that's the second largest commodity by means of value of the commodity that are produced in 2022. So this data pertains to 2022, but not much of change would have happened from this data to the current data, right? Because none of the prices have changed phenomenally to say that like metals are today the largest traded commodity. No, energy commodities are the largest traded commodity, the metal commodities are second largest traded commodities, and the agriculture commodities are the third largest traded commodities, actually. Wait, so how do these markets operate? So let's move on from one market to the other market, actually. Let's look at the agricultural commodities market. So in agricultural commodities market, traditionally, people had a place where they gathered and they exchanged commodities for a common medium, which could be a currency, which could be a coin, or whatever it is historically. That is the way that we moved on from the barter system to a market based transaction system, actually. So that's a system. But in the end, in the traditional market system, it has been realized of late in the 1900s and 1950s and 1960s that the traders had a control on the price discovery, and traders actually gave lower compensation to the producers, and in the end charged the consumers at a very high price, actually. So that basically means that the trading activity would have to be regulated. The trading activity of the regulator, the traders would have to be regulated, and that regulation can come in by way of making, bringing in transparency into the market. So thereby, the country brought in the APMC marketing system, which is the regulated markets, and two or three significant things happened, actually. Any trade or every trade that happens would have to happen only in an APMC market yard between a farmer and a trader. That's the first transaction that happens between a farmer who is a producer and the first level of a buyer or the seller, actually. And and the prices at which these commodities are transacted would have to be shown in the the blackboard which might be there outside the office of the APMC market yard. So that becomes a benchmark price for the farmer to who is coming in tomorrow to count today to see what is the price at which it is prevailing, so that he can decide whether he can bring his commodity today, tomorrow, and sell it tomorrow, actually. So it gives him a view of whether he gets the right price or not, actually. So that is one advantage that they have got. And besides that, the officials also have a control on what is coming in and what is not coming in. Yet this was actually a system wherein the traders had a control on the prices, because they are more organized than the farmers, actually. And forcing them to sell through this mechanism is basically something where we say that no, you will have to only trade through this mechanism, so that the traders can continue to fleece you in terms of the prices that you can get for the agriculture commodities that you produce. So this is where the development of information and communication technology had actually led to the policymakers to think about it, and they came up with the Model APMC Act, and they actually debated it out in the parliament, and discussions happened between farmer groups and the parliamentarians and things like that. They finally liberalized, saying that we will come up with a Model APMC Act, and that APMC Act can be adopted by the state government, so that the farmers can be liberalized from the mandatory condition that they will have to sell only in the regulated, APMC market yards. So they have been freed from regulated aid, selling it only in the regulated APMC market yard. So they can go and sell it whomsoever the trader who is coming to them, whomsoever who is giving them the best price to sell that at a particular point. And so this also encouraged, because our information and communication technology was developing, this also encouraged entrepreneurs to set up digital markets, actually. What are those digital markets? One of the example that I can quote you for the digital market is NEM, and NCTX Electronic Markets Limited, actually. So that had actually led to standardization of these commodities, quality certification of these commodities, because when you digitally deal with them, you need to know what is the commodity that you purchase and how much you are purchasing. Obviously, how much you are purchasing is quantitatively measurable, and qualitatively you should assay that and standardize that and sell it in the digital market. So that led to increasing amounts of standardization and quality certification, and selling it through the digitalized market platforms, which are smart market platforms, actually. And then comes your Unified National Electronic Agriculture Market, ENA, actually, Electronic National Agriculture Market. So the government said that, so we have APMC market yards, and these market yards are spread from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. Why don't we link them through the electronic platform of digital spot markets, so that a person who's producing chana in Rajasthan should be able to sell it to a trader in Cochin or Chennai who wants to buy it and distribute it in Tamil Nadu or Kerala, actually. So that's the kind of seamless connectivity that got formed, because you don't need to worry about what is the quality that you are getting, because you know when you buy that commodity that this is the quality and this is delivered at that particular marketplace. Yet there was one constraint, because I can order it on the eNAM. The guy who's in, let's say, Rajasthan can sell it to me, but how do I bring it, actually? So there, the logistics was another problem, which eNAM today is actually entering in to resolve that problem by getting in logistics players into the marketplace, actually. So now with eNAM taking most of the marketplaces, actually, agriculture markets are national agricultural markets. They are no longer regional agricultural markets, actually. So that's a significant development that eNAM had contributed in terms of linking up all the APMC market yards through the digital buying and selling platform, actually. So that's the significant development that it happened actually. Okay, so we've seen about the agriculture markets. They moved on from unregulated to regulated and controlled, and then into non-regulated but yet digital and transparent platforms in which prices were discovered in the spot markets for the agriculture commodities. But when you look at the non-agriculture commodities, the spot markets for the non-agriculture commodities, the markets were largely unregulated, and these are transactions which happen between the buyer, the producer, and the trader, and the buyer, or the producer and the buyer directly. So there could be a long way, value chain. There could be a very short value chain, depending upon which commodity, what size of the producer that we are talking about, actually. So the markets are all unregulated. The storage is also unregulated. The storage of these metals are unregulated, actually. And there was no electronic platform for any of the non-agriculture commodities. Now they are coming up, actually. Okay. And the logistics and transportation is also unregulated. But to some extent, some of the activities in non-agriculture commodities are controlled, actually, where there is a control on gold imports that can be done, because it is only those entities which are empowered to import gold, they can import gold and sell it in the country. Only those entities which are empowered to distribute petrol or licensed to distribute petrol can actually set up a petrol pump and distribute petrol to the people who are wanting to buy that, actually. And same is the case with natural gas. So marketing of oil and natural gas is largely controlled by way of a licensing process. Who is the authority which actually controls that licensing processes is actually Petroleum and Natural Gas Resources Board. Who is the authority who controls what the banks do in gold imports? It is the Reserve Bank of India who actually controls the imports of gold. I would not say controlling imports of gold, channelizes the imports of gold through nominated agencies which have been nominated to import gold into the country. And on the other hand, some of the activities are actually regulated, which is mining of most non-agriculture commodities. If you want to set up a mine, you have to go through a regulated process which you should adhere to, so that you can set up and operate a mine for an iron ore, or for mining coal, or whatever it is, actually. And besides that, the derivative markets, which is the markets for trading in options and futures contracts for non-agriculture commodities or agriculture commodities, are all regulated, actually. Who's the regulator? We look into it a little later. But before we get into this, I just wanted to highlight to you the significant development that had happened in the warehousing sector, which many of us do not know or ignore, that is that there is a regulator for the warehousing sector today operating in the country, and that is nothing but the Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority, and they have been operational from 2010 onwards, actually. And they've been empowered by the Warehousing Development and Regulation Act 2007. What is the function that they do? They ensure that the commodities which are stored under the regulated warehouse are scientifically stored, and the warehousemen are adequately trained, and they carry their duties and responsibilities in a better manner. They are well qualified. They go through the code of conduct process which has been set up for these people, and they also regulate one more entity. It's not only WDRA and regulated warehouses. There is also commodity repositories which have come into picture now. So any commodity that you take it into the regulated warehouse, actually, would be registered with a commodity repository, and you will be issued either a negotiable warehouse receipt or a non-negotiable warehouse receipt, actually. And you can take an electronic negotiable warehouse receipt, and you can go to the bank, and then you can pledge that. It's not a physical warehouse receipt. It is an electronic warehouse receipt. And if you give the bank to actually the mandate to pledge that, they will mark the pledge in alignment with the repositories, and they will give a loan against that particular commodity. And today, it is safer for the banks to lend because they don't need to bother about who's storing my commodities, whether that is being stored in a better manner or not, actually. So that process has been taken care by the scientific warehousing norms that have been set up by the WDRA, and the and the supervision of that particular process by the commodity repositories, which ensures that what goes in or which quality goes in is the quality that comes up, or with how much quantity that goes in is the quantity that comes up with little bit of changes, which is adjusted for changes in the moisture and things like that, actually. So there is an assurance that the commodity that goes in is the commodity that you get at the same quality, or a little bit of a quality up or down, depending upon whatever the conditions that have been told to you, and so that you are comfortable about it, actually. So they also said regulate the rates, the warehousemen charge people who are storing the commodities. They also set the terms and conditions for the warehousing businesses, actually. So in a way, the entire warehousing process today are being regulated. Okay, so having said that, are all the warehouses today regulated? No, not all, because this is not mandatory regulation. This is a voluntary regulation, actually. So today, if you talk about how much of the warehousing capacity is being regulated, I would safely say that around 20 to 25% of the total warehousing capacity of around 140 million tons is being is being brought under the regulated warehousing sector, actually. So this includes a lot of the state civil supplies corporation warehouses, our state warehousing corporation warehouses, and things like that, actually, including the private warehousing companies, actually. So warehousing as a whole in itself is a big commodity, actually. So what are the commodities, which are storable under WDRA? Because WDRA does not allow all the commodities to be regulated. WDRA has notified commodities which can be stored, which many of us may not be aware. They have notified agriculture commodities and horticulture commodities, which including the processed agriculture commodities, which includes your pulses, cereals, vegetable oils, actually edible nuts, oil seeds, spices, makana, right? So that's not an agriculture commodity; it's an horticulture commodity. So and other commodities. So 159 agriculture commodities. And very recently, WTRA has also notified 9 non-agriculture commodities to be storing of those commodities to be regulated under the WDRA Act, actually. So you can store an aluminum, take an electronic negotiable warehouse receipt, go to the bank and give them the reference of the electronic negotiable warehouse receipt and finance that, actually. So, what is the significance of financing the commodities? The significance of the financing of the commodities is coming up because we grow as an economy, and as we grow as an economy, there is more and more demand for processed commodities, and there is more and more demand for processed commodities. These commodities would have to be bought, stored, and then processed and sold. And when these are bought and sold and processed, they have to be stored at an economical cost. And especially when you are taking those commodities which are seasonal in nature, you have to store them for fairly a longer period in time. And to that extent, your working capital gets locked up if you are a processor. So if there is a financing mechanism, you can actually get the commodity financed. And so thereby you unlock your capital. And so there you can actually pay up your electricity consumption, pay up your labor who's involved in the value addition processes, actually. So the important process which is getting unlocked by this key reform measure that has been taken up in 2010 is financing of commodities that is to go up at a large way, actually. And that is a key development that is going to happen. So which are those electronic repositories today that are operational in the country? You have NCDX, National Electronic Repositories Limited. You have CDSL, Commodity Repository Limited, actually. So you have two electronic commodity repositories that participate, that intermediates the storage of the commodities through a set of participants who are called as repository participants by them. They have their own duties and responsibilities in terms of, warehouse maintenance supervision and the account maintenance and the pledgee relationships, actually. Okay, so that's about a significant reform that has happened in the warehousing side, actually. So if you look at the overall commodity markets, actually, so you have the physical markets on the one side, you have the derivative markets on the other side, actually. So in this physical market, when the farmer sells it to the first level trader, that becomes the primary sales, and that has so far been regulated under API, I would say. But today they are not regulated, and they can go and sell and buy at any place or at any platform that they would want to offer. And the secondary sales historically has been uh, happening on a a trader to trader basis, and it doesn't happen on a regulated platform or something. So the entire spot in physical markets for be it agriculture commodities, be it non-agriculture commodities, happen under the non-regulated platform or non-regulated environment, actually. On the other hand, you have the derivative market, which you can actually divide that into the OTC derivative market and the regulated or the uh, standardized derivative market, actually. So, what are these OTC derivative market? If you are talking about OTC options, if you are talking about OTC forwards, actually, which are non-standardized, so these are OTC instruments, and they are trading on non-regulated platform or on a person-to-person basis, because these are largely not standardized and they cannot be traded on liquid exchanges, actually. On the other hand, the standardized contracts such as options or futures are today traded on regulated exchanges, actually. So that is the overall structure of the Indian commodity markets, actually. So what's a commodity market? So you need to define what's a commodity market. Let's move on from a spot market to a derivative market. How that has evolved over a period in time. So a commodity market we have seen in the earlier slide is a physical or a virtual marketplace where the buyers and sellers congregate together and they trade in raw material or the processed products, actually. And that's a physical place. Buyers and sellers meet, transact, and while they transact within own set of rules and regulations like any other marketplace, actually. And they transact using a spot contract where the delivery is made and the transfer of money from the buyer to the seller takes place immediately or with a short lag, which is actually agreed upon between the buyer and the seller, actually. And physical trading normally involves, when you are physically trading the commodity, you go see the commodity, inspect the commodity, and weigh the commodity and ask them if there is a quality certification. Look at the quality certification, and then you quote a price to that, actually. So that is the way that physical markets continue to operate, actually. And commodity markets can include physical trading and derivatives trading using spot prices, which includes your non-regulated forwards as instruments and regulated futures and options on futures, actually. So we'll talk about this particular instrument, options on futures, in the coming slides, actually. So futures contracts are the best possible way the financial investing in commodities. So having said that, this being a futures contract, you don't need to bother about having the commodity in your hand. You can sell a futures contract, you can square off your position similar to your equity derivative contract and get out of the market, actually. So this makes it the best possible way of financially investing in the commodities. Before it enters into the maturity period, you square off your position and come out of the market, or you square off your position from the nearby contract and get into the next contract so that you have a continuity of your position. And that continuity is being enabled by just doing financial investing. You are not physically storing the commodity, you are financially investing in the commodity. So that's the beauty of this exchange traded commodity derivative market, which makes commodities financially investable, actually. So derivative markets require the existence of agreed standards so that the trades can be made without visual inspection. Because if you are buying a cotton contract, if you are buying a gold contract, you know that the gold is referring to 995 quality of the gold actually. So you don't need to bother about what is that I am buying. What is that you are buying is 995 gold and to be delivered in Ahmedabad. So that you know, and you can participate, you can take delivery, get the product out of the market. And one of the significant thing that I couldn't mention it over here, because today all the warehouses which are delivering these commodities have been mandated to be WDRA warehouses. The deliveries in agriculture commodities happen by way of transfer of title or the ownership of the electronic negotiable warehouse receipts from the seller to the buyer. The commodities do not change hands. It is the title which changes on the negotiable warehouse receipt from the seller to the buyer once the money has been transacted. So that's a significant change that has happened, wherein you don't need to bother about the physical movement of the commodities. You can still go to the commodity as a electronic negotiable warehouse receipt, and you can still sell it in the next contract and come out of that position. So yet again, there is another way by which you can financially treat the commodity. So you don't need to bother about holding the commodity, worried about the commodity and things like that. Actually, okay. So we need to move on from the spot markets to commodity derivative markets. And when did they come in? These markets are as old as BSES, which is 1875. Why did they come into? As you might be aware of, there was a big momentum that happened in the 19th century, wherein colonizers such as the French, the Spanish, and the British actually started voyages and started colonizing countries which are rich in terms of their natural resources actually, and they exported those natural resources, buying them at the cheap most possible, are using the slavery as a method to actually produce these commodities at a competitive prices. They bring it to their own countries, they do value addition, and then they sell it to the entire world. And they are actually, by way of colonizing, they were actually doing an economical trade, buying it cheap and selling it, costlier. So why did commodity derivative markets come into India in 1875? Those who are aware of the American, history of colonization, 1860s and 70s was a significant time wherein the ruled rioted against the rulers, actually, which is the Britishers, actually. And one of the commodities which the US has been exporting across the Atlantic to the Britain was cotton. So the cotton was exported to Manchester, and Manchester used to process this cotton into, the clothes and things like that, or do value addition and send it across to the entire world, actually. And crossing the Atlantic may not take much time. But unfortunately, the civil war of the US actually led to stagnation of the ports, the cotton not reaching out to the mills appropriately, and mills scrambling to get as much cotton as possible so that they can keep the mills running, so that they can meet the supply demand which is coming up from the supply, from the people who are buying their finished products from across the world, so that they can meet their supply contracts which they have given to them and things like that, actually. So there was a literal civil war that led to blockade of these commodities in US, and that led to the UK or the Britishers to look at India as a source of cotton, and that actually led them to think about why not we have a cotton futures trading, our Bombay Cotton Exchange in India. So that led to setting up of a market called Bombay Cotton Exchange. And what value that it added to them is that the textile mills can actually fix the 2 month ahead delivery cotton today, so that they can offer the prices over to their suppliers, adjusting for the contract that they have taken in the Bombay Cotton Exchange. So this includes the time for shipping the cotton to Manchester, and then doing the value addition and shipping it back to the people who are demanding those commodities, and getting the value realization back. I mean, look at the kind of length of the value chain. So that typically varies between 3 months to 6 months. So given this kind of a time period between sales realization and the procurement of the raw material, they needed contracts which actually help them to fix up the prices of raw material so that they can offer a concrete price to those buyers of the finished products actually. So that led to formation of Bombay Cotton Exchange. And post that, you had series of regional commodity exchanges which traded on floor based. Floor based means, you get into YouTube, you look at floor based trading, you'll get interesting, videos on how commodities were traded on floors. Means buyers and sellers, shouted the prices in terms of the hand signals that they have, and those hand signals are noted down by the exchange officials, and the trades are matched and announced at the end of the day. So that is the way by which trades in regional exchanges have happened actually. So there were several regional exchanges post 1875 which came up. Kolkata, few bullion exchange came up very significantly. You have Gujarat, Rajkot, and you have many other exchanges. And there were like 300 exchanges which were formed dealing in different commodities, but they dealt only in regional commodities. Let's say, for example, Meerut dealt in potato because potato was largely grown in that particular area. Meerut dealt in good because good was produced in that particular area. And came the critic on the commodity markets or commodity exchanges. Actually, the government became little fearful about trading in commodity, regional exchanges actually, and they started prohibiting forward trading in some of the commodities starting from 1943, and by 1960, with the Bengal famine, most of the commodity trading or all of the commodity trading has been sent into oblivion actually. So between 60 and 2003, there was no commodity trading that was happening on any of the commodities. But in 2003, the government liberalized commodity trading, and thereby the modern online national electronic exchanges came into being actually. And what is these exchanges actually? These are exchanges which are central marketplaces. They have their own rules and regulations, and buyers and sellers meet to trade the futures and options contracts on futures actually. So they do add value to the economic infrastructure because these are transparent, and the transparency of the prices led to efficient transactions between different players within the market ecosystem. And these are financial contracts. Anybody and everybody with the information about supply and demand for of these commodities can participate and discover the prices jointly. And most importantly, it transfers the risk of commodity price volatility between the people who are hedging to the people who are speculating. And who are speculating it? Those who are speculating as to what the commodity prices given the demand and supply information that they have got actually. So that's a significant function that the commodity derivative markets do. And they are happening, as I told you, on an electronic modern exchange, and they are automated, national reach, and they are order driven trading system, and any price and every price that is discovered is transparent, distributed across the electronic platforms, be it television or websites or print media. They are all published across the platform. More importantly, the identity of the trader who is trading in the market is undisclosed, so thereby you will not look at who's standing opposite side, and so thereby you can manipulate the price quotes, so that depending upon whether there is a large buyer or a small buyer, vis-a-vis a small seller or a large seller actually. So that is the important part. And there are financial turnover limits that have been set up, and you can also place an order depending upon you want to execute it immediately with an ongoing price, or you want to execute it at a later point in time when you get the price what you want to get actually. And the entire market price discovery happens completely online, and there is a real-time market information that is available across the entire ecosystem. And the Square Up facility is very important for financial participation in the commodities. So who is the regulator of the commodity? The supermost regulator is Ministry of Finance. And why we call them as regulator? Because the exchanges function under the SCRA, Securities and Contract Regulation Act, and SCRA is actually SCRA has given powers for Ministry of Finance to declare the securities which can be traded on the exchanges actually. And who is the regulator of the markets? The way that they function, that is the Securities and Exchange Board of India. So they regulate the commodity markets. And the second level of regulation happens in terms of self-regulatory organizations, which are called as commodity exchanges, MCX and CDX and BSE. So this is the modern. The past was regional exchanges. The modern exchanges are national, electronic, online, regulated exchange traded marketplaces actually. So today we have 4 exchange traded markets: MCX, largely trading the metals and bullion and energy commodities, and NCTX largely trading on agriculture commodities, NSE trading on metals and energy, and BSE has a mix of metals, energy, and agriculture commodities. So what do you trade? The principal and the fundamental instrument that you trade is a futures contract that you trade. And a futures contract typically has about 3 fundamental, uh, you know, you know, segments which you should be aware about, which tells you about the contract details, what is the contract symbol, when is the contract is going to be listed, when the contract was listed, what is the state or day on which the contract started trading on, what will be the last trading day. So everything is there in the contract details. So you should be aware of that from that perspective. And the risk management, because the price discovery happen under a regulated environment, so that there are risk management parameters that have been set up in the contract in itself. So you need to know that actually. So there are daily price limits, and you need to pay an initial margin, or you need to keep an initial margin with an exchange in order to take a position actually. And those margins are multiple extremely margin, initial margin, and if there is an additional volatility, there is an additional margin that will be applied on that. In the in addition to that, there is also a maximum allowable open position that helps control concentration of positions in the market actually. So there is this contract details you have to be aware about. You also should be aware about the risk management parameters, which is mentioned at every futures contract for any commodity will have these 2 parameters in addition to the third parameter set of parameters, which is the delivery specification. Which commodity, what is the delivery unit that you will be, where you will be delivered, what is the quality that you will have to deliver, and all those are actually mentioned in the delivery specifications actually. Okay, so having said that, what is the ecosystem that, so we have a participant ecosystem, we have the exchange ecosystem. So all that what is traded on the exchanges actually are cleared through the clearing ecosystem. And the clearing ecosystem, apart from the exchanges which has trading members and the participants on the left side that you see, the clearing ecosystem has clearing members, the commodity repository, because they have to transfer the commodity from the buyer to the seller at the maturity of the contract. So there is a commodity repository, there is a clearing bank, which actually enables the transfer of money from the buyer to the seller actually. So there is a clearing bank, there is an assayer, which actually standardizes and quality certifies the commodity. And there is a warehouse, obviously, in which the commodities are kept so that these can be delivered through the commodity repository mechanism. And more importantly, there is a spot market where the prices are being poured and announced to the market actually. So that is an important part of the trading ecosystem actually, because the last price at which the contract will be settled is by way of an average of every day spot poured market prices actually. And this is an important part that you need to remember when we go to the next slide, next slide when we talk about it actually. Okay, so what are the products? We know that for sure that we have futures and we have options. In the commodity markets, in options, there are 2 types of option. One is option on futures. That means when this option actually matures, all those which are in the money, the contracts will converge into the underlying futures contracts actually. So those option positions will be converted into the underlying respective futures position actually. And then apart from that, there is an option on goods where on expiry, all those in the money options will end up in delivery of the commodity actually. That means the buyer will have to buy the commodity, the seller will have to deliver the commodity. And there are index futures and index options because there are commodity indices which are calculated and announced by the exchanges. There are also futures contracts on futures and index options. And apart from that, the products, you also have to be aware about the participants who are allowed to. You and me can participate as retail. Corporates, they hedge on the exchanges so that they can transfer the price risk over to the hedge, speculators on the platform. And there are people who are enabling financial participation in the market actually. And those are financial institutional players, which is domestic financial institutions actually who participate, which is mutual funds today can participate, ETFs can participate, portfolio management service providers, PMS providers can participate in commodity markets, alternative investment funds can participate, and foreign portfolio investors are today allowed to participate, subject to some of the regulatory conditions that they have to adhere to. For example, foreign portfolio investors cannot participate in any physically delivered commodity. That means they can only participate in financially settled commodities. So, what is the only group of financially settled commodities that we are talking about is the energy commodities. Crude oil and natural gas are the two contracts which they can participate actually. Okay, what is the condition with respect to alternative investment funds? They can only take leverage up to the extent of 2x actually. So that basically means you can buy, with 100 rupees worth of money that you have, because you have to only keep about 10 to 15 rupees as margin, and you can buy 100 rupees worth of the commodity derivatives. You can keep 20 to 30 rupees as a margin and buy 200 rupees worth of. So you can have 2x exposure into those commodities. You cannot have more than that actually. So these are conditions which limit their participation, and that limitations are understood because they are in there because the participation is not so mature in our commodity markets actually. Okay, so what are the timings? There are three set of timings actually. When you talk about agri products, they trade between 9 and 5 p.m. When you talk about the agri or processed products, they trade between 9 and 9 p.m. And global products, they trade between 9 a.m. and 11:30 p.m. actually. Okay, what is the future? So we saw we saw the past, we saw the present, and what is the future? So when these regulations are being liberalized over a period in time, we will have a number of ETFs with the underlying commodity futures positions, which can be broad based, which can be leveraged. That means 2x crude oil, 3x crude oil, 2x gold, 3x gold. So these kind of instruments can also be traded as they are available in the developed markets. And you will have mutual funds purely and purely focusing on commodity strategies, actually. So these are things which can also be traded. And you will also have trading in the ENWRs, which are going to come up in the commodity spot markets, and these become the settlement prices for the commodity derivative markets actually. And today, as you saw, the markets operate between 9 o'clock and 11:30 in the night. But if you look at the international markets, the screen that you see on your right corner is actually a Globex platform where the commodities traded 24 by 7. There's no holidays, there is no break in the market except for half an hour break at the end of the day actually. So that is the morning. So you have to have we will also have commodity prices, commodity derivatives which are traded on 24 by 7 markets actually, because commodities are produced globally, commodities are traded globally, and people trade 24 by 7 across the time horizons actually. So that is the point. Okay, so you saw these spot polling activity that is being taken up actually. Now today, the similar process is being done by price reporting agencies, a new series or species of participants who come into the market, they have leveraged the technology actually, and they have perfected the process of setting and announcing those prices on a daily basis to key commodities in key regions where these commodities are being traded in the spot market. So, what they are trying to do is to throw light into the transactions that are being done in key commodities in key markets, actually. And because of what they do today, their benchmarks are followed very vigilantly by the physical commodity market participants. In addition to that, their benchmarks are also used by international exchanges such as Intercontinental Exchange, CME Group, and SGX. SGX has iron ore futures, which is based on the Platts iron ore, iron ore prices which are being poured and announced, and the Argus ammonia futures, actually, which is an Argus ammonia polling that is being done by the Argus company. So these are new developments which might come in at a later point in time, where you would see PRA benchmark based futures actually. So that will enrich the number of commodities that today are available, because you don't need to worry about the delivery of the commodities. What you need to worry about is the mechanism of polling is as strong as possible, as like the PRAs. In PRAs have been extending their reach, have also been adhering to a lot of regulations, including ISCO regulation, which is a super regulator for almost all the regulators, actually. So they meet ISCO's transparency, integrity, and accountability guidelines, actually. So you'll see most of these commodities coming under. So what is going to happen in the commodities part ecosystem is there should be a maturity of the commodities part ecosystem, where ENAM is coming up, ENWR is being coming up, and they are being financed, and banks are coming in slowly and slowly in financing those commodities. And apart from ENAM, which is dealing in agriculture commodities, you have energy exchange and gas exchange. And we also have warehousing development and regulatory authority, and CCRL and NERL, who are enabling the financing of warehouse receipts. So that majority of the warehouse commodities spot market ecosystem will lead to transparency in the agriculture spot markets, and that will lead to confidence in the policymakers in the agriculture spot markets, agriculture derivative markets, actually. Okay, so we saw the missing products, and we are going to see the missing participants today. You do not have banks participating in the commodity markets, but if you look at here, they have many number of activities which are being done by them. So they provide OTC contracts to your Indian oil, and that Indian oil actually take that to hedge their exposure. Okay, end to end, they come and hedge their exposure to Indian oil in an exchange traded instrument, actually. So they act as an intermediary between your Indian oil, which is actually refining crude oil, and the crude contracts which are getting traded on the exchanges. So they enable trading, they empower hedgers, they do market making in the markets. Actually, they provide clearing and settlement services, which today are being done in the Indian markets also. And they are doing financing, which is in a way is being, and they also provide advisory services. We don't have that now. They also provide asset management today in a way that is being done by the depositories and asset management companies, which may be bank subsidiaries, actually. They provide research and analysis to the market, actually. So if you're talking about crude oil, Goldman's research report is the benchmark research report everybody looks into when that is being announced, actually. We don't have an Indian commodity market research report. We have to have that, and that can only happen when Indian banks are allowed to participate in the Indian commodity derivative market. And research and forecasting, because banks are people who do not have inherent interest in these commodity or the commodity prices, and they don't trade in commodities per se for the sake of trading. They provide impartial research and forecasting services which can be trusted by the entire market participants. Apart from that, apart from the banks, you don't have insurance. participating. And why do insurance come? Insurance come into commodities because commodities provide better risk adjusted returns, actually. Better risk management, better risk adjusted returns. And because these are financial instruments, you can have better liquidity and it provides for cost efficiency, actually. And to the pension funds, commodities act as diversifiers, and pension funds over a period in time will have to protect the value of the funds that they are managing. And that can be what best can be done apart from the commodity derivatives in order for delivering inflation protection to the participants, actually. So return enhancement, diversification, inflation protection are some of the expectations of the pension funds, in the commodity investments, which can be delivered, and that can be empowered when these three entities are allowed to participate in the commodity derivative market. That's all. Thanks for your patient hearing, and I hope commodity markets will have more products, more participants, liberalized regulations, and so thereby there is a vibrant and robust Indian commodity markets, which will help India to move on from fifth place in terms of GDP to become the third or the second largest economy in the world, actually. So it is these markets which provide competency to the players in the markets, and that provides the competency in international trade, provides for innovation that keeps us on top of in terms of becoming the key player in JDP terms. So thank you everyone for your patient hearing. So uh, that's it from my side. So let me see if there are any questions from your side and let me address it. Uh, is this session foregone? Who is pursuing graduation or for working professional? No, this session is just to introduce you to the world of commodities. What are they? How are the spot markets being arranged? How are the commodity derivative markets are being regulated? What are the instruments which are being traded? Who are the participants? And what are the reforms which are pending? Actually, to just to tell you, Prashant Singh, your question is how important is the derivative products open interest indicator for demand of various commodities associated with a particular derivative? Open interest indicator is our open interest column, which is there in the bow copy, which has been put up by the exchanges actually. That is the indicator. So if that is 21, that means there are 21 people who are ready to buy and sell a particular contract in that particular commodity actually. So OI as a number is published on the terminal and also at the end of the day as part of the bow copy. Can I get a certificate for attending? I think uh,
Yes, sir. We will be issuing the certificates to the participants.
okay, so you will issue. Dhruvi, you had what is here the meaning of high level of inelastic demand? So it is here the mean that commodities would have continuous demand despite what the prices are, and so thereby there is a scope for increase and decrease in the prices actually. So that is what I meant to say, that so that there is opportunities for speculators to take advantage of the movement of the prices actually. I hope I have answered you, Dhruvi. And Mohammed, you had asked us kindly tell us how to trade crude oil and gold options. Okay, so this session is not to tell how to trade. And in order to understand how to trade, you will have to go through training sessions on, commodity derivative markets actually. So to tell you in simple, as you buy equities, you pay a margin, and you buy equities, and then end of the day you pay the full money and get the delivery of the equities in the cash market. Similarly, you have to keep the margin with the broker, and then you have to take the position, and you have to keep on filling up your mark to market margin calls by the broker on a daily basis until you keep your position open. And that is an important requirement that you have to take care actually. And finally, the contract will be settled either in terms of delivery or financially by your broker. You may have to pay up. If you are losing, you will get the profit if you are profiting. Or if you are a buyer, you will have to take the delivery. And if you are the seller, you will have to enable to deliver the commodity if you have kept your open interest until the maturity of the contract. What about the loopholes in the commodity market? I don't think there are any loopholes in the commodity market because there are so many regulations which control how the commodity markets function, how the participants are participating in the market, and our markets are, developing or not well developed, and our products are very conservative in terms of their product design and things like that. So there cannot be any scope or loopholes in the commodity market. But do get in touch with me if you do have a particular concern about the loopholes. I will be able to answer how that loophole is being, taken care. Despite there being gold exchanges, it is not considered a regulated commodity. Yeah, hi Prashant, you're right. I missed on saying that actually. You have exchanges today spot trading on gold receipts actually. So there is a regulated market trading in gold actually. So we know the basics. Yes, this is more about basics actually. Share the PPT. Rajalakshmi, do we share the PPT?
Yes, sir. We will be uploading the recorded version of this webinar on YouTube very soon, and then we will be sharing the link with all the participants.
Okay, so you will get the PPT and also the entire presentation for those who have missed on participating from the beginning. Actually, thank you, Hardik, for thanking me. And we have Anant asking me which broker is good for commodity market. I don't know how I can answer that actually, which you will have to do your own assessment of, which broker has been punished in the past in terms of regulatory actions by the regulators, and which broker has not created any controversies in the past actually. And you will have to choose that. And also there are many parameters that you have to keep in mind. Who is easy to who has a very good, help desk and things like that. Those are things which you have to keep in mind while you choose your broker. Actually, how do we make ourselves well versed with commodity market as a person who want to enter the commodities market? Get certified by NISM commodities certification mechanism. So there will be a reading material. You go through the reading material and you will understand the reading material and you will come and participate on the certification. And once you are certified, you can rest be assured that you know the ins and outs of the commodity markets in terms of empowering you to participate, not that you are becoming an expert in commodities or forecasting or pricing or things like that, but it empowers you to participate. Sir, career future MCX meet. I don't know, Hardik. Yes, there is a lot of ecosystem participants apart from the exchanges. There are brokerages who would look for people to get employed as people who empower operations in commodity derivative market, people who provide multifarious services in commodity markets, including research and estimations and things like that. So you can become one of those people who actually serve the commodity markets ecosystem if you become empowered with the knowledge of the commodity markets. Kranti Kumar, is commodity depends on the demand and supply? Obviously it has to depend on the demand and supply, and it should not be determined by the brand of the commodity or the maker of the commodity actually. So when the commodity is actually purely determined by the demand and the supply forces, then that I can call it as a commodity which can be traded in a commodity derivative market actually. Devansh, you have a question. If we buy electricity, where will we store it for selling in future? Oh yeah, that's a good question. So probably there are storage mechanisms that are coming up where you can cost effectively store it actually electricity, because in order for you to store it, you have to actually convert it into DC and then store it into storage instrument which is called as batteries actually, and then you have to sell it. Then you will have to take out the DC and then you have to convert that into AC and then you have to distribute it actually. So these mechanisms are coming up, but the point is the cost of doing it is very high compared with the opportunity that you get by storing and selling it actually. So storing is not a prevalent practice, but over a period in time, as inventions come up in terms of storage, conversion, and distribution, You will have opportunities for storing and selling the electricity in future. Explain commodity markets in relation with finance. Commodity markets needs a lot of finance so that it can move up in terms of the value chain, and that finance can be empowered by the banks. And banks can only empower when commodities become one and asset classes where they don't need to fear about the storage of the commodity, the quality of the commodity, and the disposal of the commodity. And that is now being empowered by exchanges coming in, WDRA coming in, and the collateral managers coming in who can help them to dispose of these commodities actually. So it is important that finance commodity markets develop so that they can serve the function of financing the commodities actually. I hope that is the answer, question that you posed. Even investor in commodity market makes a gain in the few financial transaction. How is it accounted in? That is accounted as if as you are having a gain in the market. That's it. That's a gain. That's a profit that you are making in the market, and uh, that will be mingled with the income that you have from other sources, and you will be slotted at the particular rate at which your income plus profit is coming up actually. So Dityendu, thank you. I mean, it's my pleasure to be delivering you with the basic knowledge. What could be derivative market size by the end of 2025? Very interesting question, actually. How do you measure the derivative market size? Do not measure the derivative market size by the uh, number of rupees crores in which it is trading. You have to measure the derivative market size by the number of times of the size of the GDP which it is actually trading actually. So today we are about 0.5% of or 50% of the total amount of GDP in terms of our total traded value of the commodity derivative contracts. Ideally, if we have to have a well-edged market, then we have to have 2 to 3 times to 4 times of the GDP. That should be the total amount of traded value of the contracts. So that is the better measure, in terms of what should be the derivative market size actually. So ideally, it is about 50% of the total GDP. If you know the GDP number divided by half, that is the market size in 2024. Maybe it could be increasing, it could be decreasing, depending upon the volatility that will be coming up in the market. Can I get the PDF of these slides? I'm sure we have answered that. Is there any website for reliable and dedicated commodity news and useful? There are many websites which actually provides dedicated commodity news and useful info for understanding day-to-day things. Actually, so there are Dow Jones and Reuters and many of Bloombergs of the world. They provide information about commodities and things like that. Some of them are paid and some of them are free to access, such as Bloomberg is paid, Reuters is free to access actually. So you'll have these actually. What is the future on lithium and erythium? I don't know what erythium means, but lithium is a battery metal. I know lithium is traded on exchanges such as CME and LME. And I'm sure as we produce more and more EV, electric vehicles in the country, we will have also the lithium futures traded in Indian markets. Actually, career options in commodity markets. You have a lot of career options in commodity markets, which varies between warehousing to collateral managers to banks to broking ecosystem to the clearing banks to the exchanges actually. So a lot of career options today that are available in the commodity markets actually. Daniel, uh, which is the best legal software to trade forex and commodities same time? um, Legal software to trade forex and commodities is the software which is provided by your broker who's in India, actually. So for that matter, you can only trade forex as per beyond a particular limit if you have forex exposure in the market, actually. So you cannot trade forex exposure beyond a limit if you don't have the exposure. Okay,
Sir,
sir, as you
sorry
said,
to interrupt you. So since we are running out of time, we can take one last question.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so okay, who is that lucky person? Let me see. In the last, actually, can you describe bit about Puneet is the last lucky person? Can you describe bit about future of agri startup in derivative market? Actually, I don't know what you mean by future of agri startup. Actually, so agri startups, in order for them to be viable, you have to have a vibrant agricultural commodities ecosystem, and that vibrancy in the output, which is the agriculture products, can be brought about by vibrancy in the market ecosystem. And vibrancy in the market ecosystem can be brought about by none other than a transparent traded derivative markets, actually. Okay, so if there is a robust and resilient traded agriculture commodity futures ecosystem, that can in turn empower the agri startups in terms of realizing what they saw as the profit potential in their agri startup initiative, actually. So I hope I have answered you. In case if you have any specific questions, please do come back and reach out to us. We'd be happy to address that, actually. So that's it. Thank you for your patient hearing, and thank you for your all the questions that you've lettered me with. And I'm sure I've tried to answer most of them. And thanks again once more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all for joining us today. Your active participation made this webinar truly valuable. And, sir, a special thanks to you for taking out your valuable time and sharing so much of insights in such an interesting and important topic. We will definitely like to have more such webinars from your end. So, once
Definitely,
again,
definitely. We can have the this particular topic to the next level. How do the commodity exchanges operate and things like that, actually. So we'll be happy to do that. Thanks a lot, Rajlakshmi.
thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone,
Have a
for
nice evening, everyone. Thank you.
thank you.